All right, let's see. I'm gonna do top lane, I think.
I'm gonna go wash my hands. My hands are grainy, and I don't want to get an eye infection.
Hey, Bubba, where you go, girl?
Hold on. Do I not have it? Oh, I guess I don't. Analytics, alerts. It's the Twitch alert bot, right? It's a Stream Elements alert. Delete alert box. Home, Stream Manager, manage goals. Copy. Set in the main menu. Let's go to here. Item box. I genuinely don't care about the prize machine. I have leveled up the battle pass. What do we got? Claim all. That is a really cute outfit for Latias, but I am a Charizard player, and if it doesn't improve stats, I do not care. And get her ready, and get her ready. Damn it. Fuck it, we ball. That's what I get for being distracted. I'll probably get Gardevoir. Wasn't choice specs I needed. I want the muscle band. What are we picking up here, folks? What are we doing here? Properties. What microphone is voice mod picking up? Okay, cool. All right, I need to hustle. Denial of resources. Damn, I finally died. Took their entire fucking team. GG? Whoops. Whoopsie daisy. I'm so tired. Oy vey. I need to get to level 10 so I can fully start upgrading my mon. Oh my god. Oh, I bid farewell.
Has a different kind of math. I think that, like, solidly about 10,000 square miles of the Empire would have just collapsed into revolt instantly. Like, it just somehow they would... A reverberation of psychic incompetence would envelop the globe, and, like, a quarter of the Empire would just catch on fire.
$200 for protonics, and Costco charges $16. Let's do another one.
The moment the Praetorian Guard comes to disappear you. Yeah, that's the fucked up thing, man. We don't even have Praetorian Guards anymore.
And the president used that mathematical device to illustrate the magnitude of the theft that has been happening against our country and our people, as he said. I was reminded when the president was...
To be fair, we're much softer than our ancestors. If you take a structural functionalist perspective and you assume that the safety that Trump gets to enjoy despite his incredible incompetence, you understand it as a deliberate product of the system, one might get very cynical about democracy, at least liberal democracy, because it does kind of seem like, especially over the past 50 years, and especially after the end of the Cold War, that many of these civil norms and procedures and institutions are working against us, in the sense that we have made politics, which is a very dangerous game. I mean, you know, many millions of people live or die every day based on political decisions. We have made it so, we've neutered it. We have made it so banal and placid and, like, enforced through procedural norms. We forget that, like, for all of human history, people have fought and killed and died over whether or not their leader is competent enough to lead the country. Now we don't. Now we're all safe. And look where it got us? I feel like there has to be some kind of incentive structure here for people in power. You know? It's not good. It's not just America either. I mean, it feels like the entire West, people are... Remember when we were looking at, in the beginning of the war with Iran, we were looking at, like, Iranian officials, and all of them have, like, PhDs, and then every American congressman is, like, a used car salesman with an IQ of 82 and a Christian evangelical. And then you look at, like, the foreign minister from Iran, and he's like, you know, he's like fucking 16 treatises that he's written this year or something. Likewise with China, you know, in the Chinese Communist Party, they do have a much higher standard of educational attainment they demand of their members than we do. Elections were supposed to be the incentive, but look how that turns out. Yeah, it turns out that doesn't really work if the average voter is a fucking idiot. Remember that one statement from the... Yeah. What was the one thing? The blank, which I assume Americans have read? No. It was... Fuck. Wasn't an Iranian official made a Jane Austen reference, and there was a clip of a BBC reporter not getting it? Am I misremembering that? Yeah, well, I don't know. Alexis de Tocqueville. You're correct. That was it. That sounds right. Yeah. All right. Hold on. We got 10 minutes till we're talking to Dylan properly this time. RFK Jr. sounds like a zombie slash the Empire is dying. Something type shit. Here. From TrueAnon, only pulling from the best sources. Oh, here's the Jane Austen reference. Yeah.
It's been quite interesting to look at the, I think, unexpected social media game of Iran recently. And the Iranian ambassador to Pakistan has posted on social media to say, it's a Pride and Prejudice joke, it's a truth universally acknowledged that a single country in possession of a large civilization will not negotiate under threat and force. This is a substantial Islamic and theological principle I wish the US would have perceived. So it's a kind of play on Jane Austen.
I actually still don't quite get why it's a play on Jane Austen, but I think it's quite convincing. It's a legitimate point.
Yeah, it's the opening line of Pride and Prejudice, a truth universally acknowledged. That's very fair. But they've had these kind of Lego memes on social media as well, where they've been getting almost like kind of, I mean, it's not official Iran accounts, but like outriders to post Lego memes mocking Donald Trump.
Which I've seen some of those, and obviously everyone told me it was a Pride and Prejudice joke that this morning. I didn't know. But I thought it was still quite compelling, which I guess harks back to Jane Austen was pretty good at what she did.
I've never read Pride and Prejudice. I did, however, order The Portrait of Dorian Gray because it came up on stream the other day, and I realized that I never read it. And it's behind me right now, so, you know, hopefully we'll get to that. I want to get through some of the classics, you know? How's Dracula going? I haven't started it yet, I'm sorry. I've been wanting to, but it's been taking all of my energy to work on my sleep health. And so far, that's been going well. So I am happy, I think, overall with the sort of general arc of my, you know, my self-improvement. Have you read any Oscar Wilde? I don't think. Maybe in school? I don't know. Did you get the uncensored version of Dorian Gray? Uncensored? I got it from the Penguin, from the classics publisher. I don't know. I assume so? All right. There are two versions. Oscar Wilde had to self-censor the second one due to homo stuff. Oh, okay. Well, I got the classics version, okay? I don't know. This definitive edition includes a selection of contemporary reviews condemning the novel's immorality. It doesn't say it's uncensored, so... Sorry, I got the cucked version. It's only like 500 words-ish. I'll look it up online. Even SAT reading questions have been dumbed down. This is a real SAT question. The following text is from David Barclay Moore's 2022 novel, Color of the Fireflies. The narrator has just arrived at summer camp, which is far away from his home. This place was different than I thought it would be. I'd never been somewhere like this before. I did feel scared, but also excited. According to the text, how does the narrator feel about being at summer camp? This can't be a real SAT question. This has to be a joke. They can't possibly... I genuinely think this has to be fake. There's no fucking way that's real. I don't know if I trust this account. If schools and universities refuse to teach us great books of the West... the account aside, I can't believe this. I just don't believe this. cooked if this is real. Don't let Iran see this, okay? Do not let Iran see this. They're going to fuck us up in the Persian Gulf. Answer the question instead of deflecting. ChatGPT. Grok. What the fuck is this? Okay.
I'm gonna go piss real quick.
Met a
Hold
doctoral
on.
student who forgot how to spell basic English words because he relies too much on Grammarly and AI. That's pretty grim, I think. Is it C? Can you guys fucking stop? You're actually embarrassing me. Autocorrect should not exist. Autocorrect should exist for phones. I don't really know about it. Like,
I'm gonna go piss myself.
shouldn't
I'll be right
exist
back.
for your PC. I mean, my phone has an autocorrect. I'm not really good at typing with my thumbs. Breaking. The U.S. has burned through so many munitions in Iran that Trump admin officials increasingly assess that the U.S. could not fully defend Taiwan from a Chinese invasion if it occurred in the near term. I'm actually going to have to change my... Like, I'm now against us intervening if China invades Taiwan, not because I think it's bad for us to intervene, but because I think we'd lose. I'm not joking. Like, I morally think that we should defend Taiwan. I think that we would lose if we did it right now, which would potentially be much bloodier than if China just overwhelmed Taiwan. We literally pulled missile defense systems from Southeast Asia to supplement our attacks on Iran. We should try, though? No? No, because if we tried and failed, we could potentially cost a lot more civilians their lives. If China just overwhelmed Taiwan, that'd be one thing, but a prolonged, like, naval war around Taiwan could potentially be a lot worse, you know? Isn't this literally the same logic for Ukraine? But I don't think the United States should invade Russia or directly position themselves in Ukraine. We have the situation with Taiwan and with Ukraine is different. We can defend Ukraine by giving them weapons, which we have been. Well, not recently, but which we did. Which I support, obviously. Are you worried about our vibe-coded future? Google says 75% of the company do because AI generated. Oh, don't worry, I know. I can feel it every time I use a new version of any software from any major. Like every time a new Windows update comes out, and then all the fucking posts online about security breaches and how non-functional everything is. I meant more so it'd be less violent if Russia just overwhelmed them. Potentially, yeah, but like that doesn't really work in the long run, though. I guess what I should say is, if Russia was guaranteed to be able to take Ukraine in relatively short order, it might be better to have let them, or it might have been better to let them. Not because it's good that they invaded Ukraine, but because if that's a losing fight, it might be worse in a utilitarian sense to prolong it than it would be to allow like an easy win, though you'd have like big problems down the line because then a very aggressive Russia would be right up against Poland or whatever. Thankfully, that's just not the case. Of course, Russia invading Ukraine and China invading Taiwan are two very fucking different situations. So, yeah. Dylan's coming to your house right now. Oh, yeah, speaking of, hold on. Yeah, you wouldn't want to embolden Russia, but, like, if there's nothing you can do... The problem with the strategy is the invaders usually just embolden to invade the next one. No, I know that. I mean, you know I know that. It's just like, if we can't do anything, we can't do anything, you know? My geopolitical positions are not motivated by, like, suicidality and you know, principles above all else. If our participation would make things worse, then that's bad. Our participation in Ukraine has made things better, though, so, you know. I mean, certainly I think that Ukraine would agree that the fact that we have provided them weapons, which we should have provided many more, it has been, you know, better. It's better that this happened than if they had just gotten invaded without any support from the West. But with Taiwan, man, like right now, sheesh. Sheesh. Yeah, we already used all 5 of our missiles in Iran. Oh, here we go. If you can get away with it, Natsuka. Dude, my back has been killing me lately. I don't know why. I do my stretches. I think I tweaked my, like, lower right back at some point. Try not to worsen it when I sleep. Oh, hey, Dylan.
Hello, how you doing?
Doing okay, just old people things. What are you? You're like 24?
I turned 25 this year.
20? Nice. Okay, yeah, you'll get there. You'll get there. Oh, here, let me...
I started doing this when I was 18, Vosh, to make you feel older.
That's
18.
fucking... That's crazy. Genuinely, that is crazy. And I remember it. I remember it, too. I remember you in my chat, and you said you were going to single-handedly, you know, take Moscow, and I said, I don't know about that, but now here you are, in Moscow.
Yeah, I'm underground right now. I'm beneath the Kremlin, actively preparing the big moment, the big strike. Gonna do what I've been planning to do. Jackson Hinkle shouldn't have let me put that tracker on him, and I know exactly where he is now.
Yeah, you will succeed where Prigozhin failed. And God bless, you know, we all need that break. Here, one sec, let me get you popped up on my screen. It's been a while since I've had someone on. I've kind of forgotten how all the buttons work, if I'm being honest with you. I'll figure it out, though. How you doing? Seriously, I mean, Jesus Christ, you've been up to a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I've been busy over the last, I mean, ever since the war started, I've been extremely busy, but I've got like 4 jobs right now that I'm like trying to like juggle with each other in order to just get stuff done. I'm trying to do whatever I can in between of that work. A project I got involved in I'm really passionate about is I'm doing a documentary with the Healthy Homes Initiative in Maryland about how landlords are paying off housing inspectors in order to get falsified reports so they don't have to repair the lead paint that are poisoning children. And there was already a convicted case of a fellow who got 14,000 homes falsely inspected and, you know, was taking bribes that is connected with children really getting poisoned, being affected for the rest of their lives. And there's legislation coming up about it on May 5th in Baltimore for anybody who lives in that area. And I want to release this documentary right before it because I want to present that despite, you know, all the achievements to fight lead, like it's still a real issue, and derelict landlords are gonna derelict landlord, you know?
There are so many, not for Maryland specifically, but there are so many accounts that I've seen of people doing like impromptu housing inspections in Arizona because they're really bad with the housing code over there. They're just erecting a bunch of McMansions on the cheap, you know, and they go like door to door and they're like, oh, look at this, the whole wall's detached. Yep, they like kick the foundation, the whole house shutters, you know. Nasty stuff. We've really, I think
it jumps like lead paint chips fall like snow.
Yeah. They're like, oh yeah, we built in like winter room. You slam the the wall and asbestos sprinkles down on you. No, it's
You don't have to do any Christmas decorating.
nasty stuff. Thank you. I'd like to take a look at that. I don't really know much about the housing situation in Maryland. I guess it's probably bad like it is everywhere else.
It depends on which county you're in. I'm from gorgeous Prince George's, born and raised. But in Baltimore, they banned Baltimore, they banned lead in Baltimore in the 1950s. Like in the year, like 1949, it got banned by the Maryland state legislature, and in 1950, it was banned in Baltimore, ahead of most of the country, because it was only banned in about like 1973, 74 federally. So it should be something you'd think with that much time, it wouldn't be an issue. But Baltimore is, in his American terms, a historic city. It's one of the, part of the original 13 states, and Baltimore's been around for a while. I mean, you read about the Civil War, like the draft riots in Baltimore. You go back to the American Revolution, you can see its involvement there. But that means lead has had a lot of time to be used in housing, and it is cheaper to just let it sit and do some minor repairs than it is to like actually dig out the walls, do a whole new foundation. So there is still a problem with a bunch of houses still having lead, and the real issue is the lead paint chips and the dereliction, because once that happens, the dust and the lead paint, that is what poisons kids.
Yeah,
that's what takes away their educational advantages. That's what makes them more predisposition to violence. I mean, it has so many detrimental effects.
Right, the Gen X effect. It wasn't Baltimore. I think it was Chicago, maybe Philadelphia. It was one of the old cities, where I was reading an article on how a bunch of their sewer systems, they're not even mapped out because they're so old that they haven't even bought. It's 150, 180 years old. So there's just an underlaying additional lead sewage system where, as far as we know, water leaches out of the mainline sewer system and back into it. It gets like lead in it, and nobody even knows where these points are. Like, it's basically just guesswork. And to actually uproot it and get rid of all that old lead sewage piping, it would be, I mean, billions and billions of dollars for a big city like Baltimore.
Yeah, I mean, for a city like Baltimore, you're talking about, I mean, that's just one infrastructure problem that Baltimore has, right? Baltimore's got a bunch of other infrastructure problems, and it's not exactly the favorite city of the United States president right now. So trying to get federal funding and assistance in these types of initiatives is extremely difficult. I mean, in Maryland, we've had confrontations where we've asked for FEMA funding after some particularly nasty floods, because Maryland isn't really flood country. It's not something that's prepared for flooding. And so when there is a flood, it can be, it can do some damage. And the government just barely even responded. They just said no. They just told us to basically buzz off. And it's just the partisan politics of it is complicated on one level. And then there's just the general dereliction of, oh, we'll just wait till next session, or, it'd be so expensive, or, what would this mean for all these mom and pop landlords, or what, XYZ. And so there's just this talking people themselves down, all these legislators and just individual, like, I guess you could say stakeholders, talking themselves down from action. And in the meantime, like, children are still being poisoned when most people think that the lead crisis is over.
Yeah, it's, I don't know. It's just one of those things where it feels like you're never going to get the political will necessary to motivate people to be willing to spend enough of their tax dollars to fix it. Like, you're just going to be dealing with some incrementally less bad version of the crumbling infrastructure year after year, because no generation of Americans would be like, no, we're okay with diverting 30% of the municipal budget towards fixing this, even though, like, more than that gets spent on police every year. Like, there's no political will for it.
The legislation that's up for the 5th isn't, hey, let's replace all the lead paint in the city immediately. It is, how about the inspectors that are taking bribes for the lead paint chips that are falling on the floor?
But that's an easy win. Yeah, that's...
How about we strengthen it so it's harder for those people to get away with it? By the way, the person who, I will just say, they poison kids. By you not doing your job in that situation, you are poisoning children. That's how it should be treated. It's not just like a paperwork, white-collar crime. If it's actually damaging the health of children, they got 2 years suspension for that. So what deterrent effects is there in place? And so right now, I'm just trying to think about these criminals poisoning children. And the main standard is right now, it's like, how about the lead paint walls? We use paint, the better lead paint, to like cover it up so it doesn't fall as much. And that's like the standard we're at now. And I'd like to get away from that conversation, but I mean, we got to stop the criminals before we can even have that conversation.
No, it's social murder. It's crazy that they can't be like arrested for that. You know, if you're an engineer and you stamp on a bridge, and the designs that you're stamping, that you're verifying, are you know, dangerous or ineffective, or you're aware of the fact that it's being constructed ineffectively, that it could be a danger to people in the future, you can be arrested for that. It's crazy that that standard of culpability isn't applied like down the line to everyone whose job is similar, because obviously, like a housing inspector or any kind of infrastructural inspection, it's literally the same thing. You are using your expertise to sign off on a project. If you're knowingly like taking bribes, you're just signing people to their death. You know, you should be on the hook for that.
I don't understand how we can give somebody like 15 to 20 years for taking $50 out of a cash register, but this guy poisoned children and he got 2 months, like 2 years suspended sentence. He's not going to stay a day in jail. He's not going to stay a day in prison. And what deterrent effect does that have? If I was a cynical inspector, I would look at that and say, I'd take that bargain. Thousands and thousands and thousands of dollar bribes for the small chance I'll get a 2-year suspended sentence. I mean, like, I am not a huge advocate of mandatory minimums, but it was hearing that suspended sentence that made me think, like, well, I don't know. Maybe we should have mandatory minimums for white-collar crimes. Maybe we should actually switch where the mandatory minimums were. I had to talk myself back from it. I was radicalizing myself in real time.
No, it's genuinely fucking crazy, and it's only been getting worse, I feel. I think that there's this weird horseshoe curve where, like, 150 years ago, graft and corruption and embezzlement and so on were incredibly common, right? Like, you know, I don't know, Wild West days of civil infrastructure and investment. And then as we got more wise to it and we started to invest in the idea of a collective civic, you know, infrastructural project, you build out these cities. It's not just a bunch of homesteaders out on roads in the middle of nowhere. You want to make this accessible to everyone. We started to push back against it and tamp down, and we built, I don't know, something akin to a civilization, and now it's just ramping up again because the law is so complicated. There are so many caveats and little pockmarks that people can take advantage of. I don't know. Yeah, it's pretty grim. But if nothing else, I mean, hopefully people can get up for, like, taking down obvious corruption, bribery, and that sort of stuff.
Also, his name was Rodney Brian Barkley, you rat fuck. He's gonna be walking on the streets free. I just want to put that out there. You know, let poison children out on the streets.
Do you have his address as well on hand?
Okay, 94 set. No, I can't do that.
Baltimore City man pleads guilty to falsifying lead paint certificates. Is 2 years suspension?
2 years suspended sentence.
Suspended sentence, yes.
So he's not. That means he doesn't spend any time in prison, and he's not gonna, like, see a jail cell.
Do we know how much he was bribed? Do we know how much he got for that?
I can't tell you off the back of my head, but I can tell you that, like, this guy, they had to redo, like, or they're gonna have to redo 1,400 homes inspections. So, I mean, that's a lot. You have to imagine there was some money that went with that.
Fucking crazy, man. That's so many lives potentially ruined.
Well, no, not potentially. The case, as we know it, the children that were in those homes that he inspected are confirmed since then to have had elevated lead levels in their blood. So we know for sure that kids did get lead in their system that will affect their health, that will be with them till the day they die, and this guy gets 2 years suspended sentence.
They should let those kids fuck them up.
I mean, you know, I'm on the internet and I'm live.
It's just, how old are they? How many babies does it take to take down one? I gotta see a picture of this guy. Let me see how fit he looks.
I looked everywhere for a picture. I looked very, very hard. I couldn't find anything.
That itself is incredibly fucked. Like, if a kid steals a candy bar from a 7-Eleven, you get his face on every goddamn local paper. But this guy just, you know, fucking over 1,000 homes, stamp your lead in it, and we don't even get to know what he looks like. That guy should have to register like a fucking sex offender. You know, go door to door and let everyone know your house may have lead because of me. Sorry.
Or hey, or the people that, you know, you might be living next to the guy that poisoned your child. You don't know.
Jesus. Yeah, I'm reading an article on it now from the banner.com. Yeah, judge opts for no jail time. She's fucking... The judicial bias towards white-collar criminals, man, it's fucking crazy. It makes me mad. Okay. Less enraging topic. Hope you don't mind the pivot. How's the war going?
You know, the war is going on. It's gone on 5 years now. So I've been doing this for nearly half a decade, and it's kind of weird to think of it in that sense, but there's a lot of, if we're just talking about the balance, right, and not just like the humanity of it, for the balance right now, the Russians are having a pretty hard time advancing. They are advancing in areas, but they're advancing at a much slower rate than they did in 2025. And the rate of advance around places like Konstantinivka are not to the standards that the Russian army would want it to be. They want to like push and try to take the rest of the Donetsk region probably sometime this year. They're pushing towards those goals. I would like to see if they could even take Konstantinivka by the end of this year. I've been filming in the Konstantinivka direction since 2022. I'm filming a documentary there from like a year on that front, on that axis with the different teams. I was at, and if anybody's following the battle, I was at the lake to the direct south of Konstantinivka. That's where I was filming with, you know, I don't know if I should say this in this connection, but it's Lubert, which is which is a derivative of Azov. For all those people at home who know of those fantastic people.
Hey, they've been
this
putting the work
is a
in,
friendly
okay?
environment. There's a friendly, yeah. I was with Woke Azov, just to be clear for everybody at home. I was with Woksov, but the fighting over there is extremely vicious, extremely slow, and it is not at a rate of advance that is beneficial to the Russian army. The Russian army is hoping that at a certain point, the Ukrainian manpower shortage will lead to frontline collapse along the entire front. The frontline strategy for the Russian army has been for a while now, and is very clear. If we push everywhere, somewhere will break. They can try to push in the direction of, you know, Kramatorsk and Sloviansk to take these cities to the best of their ability, but at the end of the day, their general philosophy across the entire front line of advance is waiting for that eventual Ukrainian collapse, which has yet to manifest in any reasonable way.
You're gonna have to slow it down with the pronunciations a little bit. Our brains are cooked from the other conflict down in the Gulf. You know, we've been asking Grok how close we are to running out of oil for the past month and a half. So, all right, I've got the live UA map up. All right, so in the cursory time I've spent, you know, recently looking at the development of this conflict, it seems like, and pardon me for my optimism if it's unfounded, I'd like you to correct me. It seems like Russia has failed to manifest the gains that they're looking for and has basically run out of ways to do it. Perhaps absent another big mobilization, which Putin doesn't want to do because it would make people very angry. Like, we know they get North Korean assistance, it doesn't move the needle, you know? They're out of equipment, at least they're out of novel equipment, and it's basically just drone pot-shotting and trench warfare right now. I don't know, like, what could move the needle in either direction at this point, you know?
There's a few things. I don't think that the general Russian infiltration strategy is going to move the needle. I think it's a way to show the government that they're advancing towards objectives while keeping the pressure on the Ukrainians. So I don't think that there's going to be any point where they put out like a big new money request, like, okay, you can have a free home from the occupied territories, which they actually are starting to talk about. You know, they're putting through programs for soldiers to get the homes that they conquer in occupied territories. But at the end of the day, I don't think that's going to be it. What will probably end up being it is whichever economy ends up buckling first, or who cannot scrape enough people together to hold that line if the collapse was to come. There's a few, as in frontline collapse. I think it'll probably be the former, and there's a few reasons for this. Number one, the Ukrainians have difficulty every year meeting their budget requirements. This is not a question of, oh, hey, right now the Ukrainians are $19.6 billion, even after the European aid package, short of their funds for defense for the year, right? Oh my gosh. But that question was happening every single year for the Ukrainians, where they have to find some way to make the budget, and they do, and they make cuts everywhere else. And that's something they've had to scrape together. The one threat that is something that really concerns me is their inability to knock out long-range Russian ballistic missiles if the American supply diminishes to a point where they can continue to undermine the Ukrainian defense industry, which has allowed them to have the manpower shortage and still hold the front line. Because when you try to move on the front line, drones see everything, and within 30 seconds to a minute of a drone seeing you, there's a drone coming to your position with an RPG or something to come kill your ass. Right?
Yeah, I don't understand how war even functions at this level. It's because the war 5 years ago and war today are two completely different things. We know this conflict has basically set the standard for what like modern relative peer conflict looks like, at least when you don't have $1 trillion to blow, which is just you pump out as many drones as you can. And I don't know, you trade FMV videos of your conscripts looking mournfully at the ground in the last 20 seconds they have before a drone hits them in the head and blows up. It's like I guess I don't even like, I don't know how much people in chat. Wait, hold on 1 second. You'll forgive me for the rest of my audience. Everyone, you all know about the optic fiber like blanket coating the whole eastern Ukraine now, right? Is this whole they assist the drones back and forth. I don't even know how the fuck you get across that. Or past that. I don't know how you rebuild through this. I guess I just don't really understand how war works. In my mind, when I think of like the Russians are moving west, I think of it in a very World War II sense. You might have trenches, okay, you've got the artillery, you've got the tanks, but like eventually the men in the uniforms make it to a town and then they, I don't know, they sit in the church and have a drink, then they move on. But it doesn't work that way anymore, right? Like it's just totally different.
It's not. I remember at the start of filming my Pokrovsk documentary, it was like the end of 2024 or something. It was sometime, yeah, it was near the end of 2024. No, I actually started filming the year before. It was well over a year filming on the Pokrovsk documentary, but a year and a half and like, that didn't really ring it as well. And I remember talking to this guy, and he says the Russians want to take Pokrovsk by the end of this year. I don't think they will, but they're really trying. And it would be another year and 2 months before the Russians would take it. And by the time they took it, the entire Pokrovsk countryside was demolished. All of the city was scarred by war. Like buildings were literally like caved in half as if like a giant pillar had come out of the earth and just sunk. Like there were sinkholes in the middle of buildings almost to just make these columns of just not buildings anymore, just destroyed rubble as if they were like jagged teeth sticking out of the ground. And to get to that point, there is no like church to go have a drink in. You can go have like a drink in like in a basement that isn't caved out. You can go like do that, but if you're a Russian soldier and you're in Pokrovsk right now, your life is at risk. Your life is at risk from drones patrolling the area, and so you're not just gonna walk on the street peacefully. If you're smart, you're gonna be running building to building still at this point. So yeah, they have the city, but there was no victorious capture, and by the time they got there, this strategic value of Pokrovsk as a logistical hub had been destroyed. The train rails were destroyed, any train infrastructure was destroyed, all the buildings were fucking shot to shit. And so this grinding advancement of the war kind of destroys not only the manpower pools that the Russians advance with due to these drone swarms and the infiltration tactics they try to use, because they can't gather up like they used to. What it used to be back in World War II was like, okay, you have 300 men together, charge! And that's like how it would work. If you do that today, you will die before you even gather. I don't even understand. You'll be blown up and all your guys will be killed. There was a huge scandal recently in a unit called Scala. I love being here because I go home and I hear like Zelensky's mansion bullshit like problems, and then I hear like the real Ukrainian problems. Syrskyi, who's the head of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, his favorite unit is Scala, and it's like this aggressive assault unit, and some people question exactly how they're always using the assaults. But there was this video they recorded where they all gathered together, like 200 of them, to show their strength, show off the new vehicles, Ukrainian propaganda, woohoo. And all the replies are like, what the fuck are you doing? Why are you all gathered together? A missile's gonna kill you all. Drones are everywhere. What are you doing? And so there's like even a public conscious like acceptance that you can't gather armies, which has led the Russians to engage in these infiltration tactics that lead to these confusing interactions with Westerners where they see one random Russian walking through a field getting torn apart by a drone, and everybody's like, oh, that's so sad. Why was he? You shouldn't be alone when you die. It's very sad that this man paid accepted a contract to come here and invade this country. But it's the only thing
you can do.
If you gather up more, then all of the drones will see it. You'll get a bunch of artillery fire and drone fire in your position, and maybe you'll gain something, but the loss will be so significant that in many instances, these armored assaults have to be done so sneakily. Like the attack into Kursk, like people, when they were not like crossing the border, the soldiers were like in civilian clothes, like just doing fuck all, just like hanging out in the countryside, because if they gathered up in uniform with their tanks and shit, they just all get annihilated. So they had to like blend in to the countryside in order to make the Kursk incursion look like nothing was really going on besides some psyoping. And so at this point, I think the biggest change to war is, of course, there's the drones, but it's the transparency. It's the fact that if you do anything in a large enough amount anywhere, you will be seen either by drones or by satellites.
So it seems like the outcome of all of this then is that war, as we understand it traditionally, is basically impossible. It's almost like I don't know what the right word, like a hyper democratization of warfare, where you no longer have these big top-level moves that dictate the flow of battle. You don't have like big shifts or these big like the kind of thing that would make the headliner on a newspaper. It's just this grinding bullshit where you just trade the production of drone factories on both sides. All the top-level strategy is like the distribution of resources in a strategic sense, but like on a tactical level, you don't really get big armored advances. You can't, because like you'll just get cut up. It's like it's a meat grind. It's like a blender. There's just a long blender line in Ukraine where no matter how much money or power or equipment you have, the moment you enter it, your life can be ended for like a $500 drone. Like that's what your life is worth there. And I don't really know how this ends. Even if Ukraine took back everything, I mean all of it, right? If Russia remained belligerent, even a country like Russia could afford to just throw drones over the border forever, right? They could just I don't know how this ends.
Risk. This is a real risk. I can tell you how the only way I see it ending, and then I can talk about the risk you just identified with like the idea of the ever war, where every few days the Russians will throw a few drones over, so nobody feels comfortable investing in Ukraine. So Ukraine stays a shallowed out husk of its demographics and of its economy that nobody wants to invest in. And it's like, hey, see what happens when you leave the Russian world? See what happens when you leave the warm embrace of the Kremlin and their fuel stocks? But I see the only way this war ending isn't like necessarily enough Russians dying, even though that is one way the war could end. I think it's just simply the inputs no longer input. Either they don't have enough soldiers to keep pushing forward, and so they have to question about a wider mobilization that will be rejected by the wider public, and so they reconsider, actually coming to the table in good faith. And when I say good faith, I mean as in they're going to actually negotiate and not, go there to, be with good interest towards Ukrainians. Or the economic inputs don't input, as in they can't make enough money to pay the soldiers. They can't make enough money to keep civil services going. They can't pay enough money to keep everything going. The Ukrainians are trying to target this outcome of the war right now. That seems to be the main strategy. There doesn't seem to be a Ukrainian strategy of, we're going to launch this big counteroffensive that's going to take X, Y, and Z, though they're constantly positioning, clearly, because they'd like that option to somewhat always be on the table, no matter how realistic that seems. They're targeting their drones or refineries. They're targeting their drones at oil export terminals, at one point knocking out 40% of Russia's ability to export. That means their capacity to actually get the oil from their country out to sea. They disabled 40% of it at one point during the big attack in the St. Petersburg region. And so it seems the Ukrainians are essentially saying, well, one advantage the Russians have is they're the largest country on the planet. Another disadvantage of that is that they're the largest country of the planet, and so they can't cover air defense systems everywhere. Their economy is stretched over such a wide area, and Ukrainian range is increasing so much that the economic damage the Ukrainians can do in bringing the war back to Russia is ever increasing.
Right, and I mean, we know, of course, like Biden's initial reluctance to encourage Ukraine to go after Russian economic targets. Obviously, as soon as they actually started hitting the refineries and the extraction facilities, Russia really started hurting. We saw that, Yeah,
but what about Harris's election chances? We didn't want the oil prices to go.
I do consider it, like, both strategically and morally a massive failure that Democrats don't make positive cases for reinforcing Ukraine. Like, we got a little window on that, but, like, I mean, this is a critical... I don't want to be negative on this, right? Because I've always been a big advocate for Ukraine getting the arms that it needs. I'm happy that EU rearmament is happening to the extent that it's lending aid to Ukraine. I wish America was lending more aid. But it seems like you can damage Russia's economy as much as you want, but it seems like we have lowered the price for engaging in conflict, in promoting civil unrest through drone warfare, so low that even a pathetically poor country could maintain it. even if Russia collapsed, it would only take, I think, like a dedicated group of insurgents or wannabe insurrectionists on the, eastern fringes of Ukraine to meaningfully hold up resistance as long as they were getting supplied the equipment for drone manufacturing. It seems like the only way to end this properly, you couldn't beat Russia out of it. They would have to agree to stop. Like, Russia would have to be put in a position where it could no longer belligerently toss drones across the border. And as you said, like, just pepper them and keep Ukraine forever like a war-torn country for the cost of what? Like 10, 20 million a year. You could just always blanket the eastern part of the country with minor drone attacks. And that's all it takes, really, to make people feel like they're always at war. I don't know where you move from that. It's so like we can't do anything to Iran. We can't do anything to Iran to dismantle their military capabilities because it's always just a guy with a Shahed in like a garage somewhere. It's so easy to conduct war now.
I will say this is a little, there's major differences between how Iran is conducting its war and how Russia conducts it. Iran doesn't have to go anywhere, right? Iran doesn't have to move masses of troops across locations that could potentially be blown up. They essentially have to keep their command and control dispersed, keep their missile control dispersed, and keep enough of these IRGC, basically dinghy boats that can go up next to ships to keep the Strait of Hormuz like under some amount of control. So this is, to be quite frank, a very low bar, generally speaking. If you cannot meet that bar, then there's not really much the Iranians can do. But so far, they've been able to meet that bar, and this administration has not shown the ability to get past that.
Then
hump.
let me ask a specific question then. So if somehow Ukraine pulled out a nasty, snapped their fingers, Russia can no longer send men west. None. It's they've retreated. There's not a single Russian in Ukraine proper. They're just holding what they have with drones, with their existing fortifications, the mines, the trenches, and they're continuing to throw drones westward. Could Ukraine retake that land, or would, even in the absence of Russian soldiers, it remain dangerous enough that it stays in no man's land?
It would be taken. It's not that drones are so overwhelming that you can't move anywhere. You can't necessarily move anywhere trying to get around these defenses, all these mine works. The way it works is, yes, drones make it so they have a transparent battlefield and very quick responsiveness. But the Ukrainians have worked very hard to set it up so that they can concentrate their fire in certain directions, because the front line in Ukraine is huge. It is ginormous. I can't exaggerate it enough that it is a gigantic front line. And so you're not going to have drones in every spot at all locations
Razor
at the
Claw
same
might be the
time,
way to go.
and you're not going to be able to have the responsiveness as quick as you would want everywhere. So what they do is, the areas you don't want the Russians to go, you cover it with mines, you cover it with like any number of obstacles to make it so that their vehicles can only go one way, and that one way is attuned with artillery, drone response, and everything you can think of. And the infantry, that's the more difficult thing, because if they send a guy to walk over a barrier in a pair of one or two, that's how you get the infiltration tactics. That's the more difficult thing to deal with. But I don't think the difficulty is going to be in taking it all back if the Russians don't send men. The Russians would eventually run out of men because they would keep dying from the drone warfare. You could be 30 kilometers, 40, 50 kilometers from the front line and still die. And so at the end of the day, they would not be able to maintain, I think, the occupation, because the Ukrainians would just advance forward and take it.
It's so scary. I know it sounds like I guess a low IQ observation. It's just very spiritually damaging, the idea that you have a war with very high stakes and very high casualties on both sides, but one where the ebb and flow of power and of troop movements isn't dictated by like these big surges. It's not directed by interpersonal engagement or by supremacy of arms or higher quality equipment. It's just like a weird, you can't hide, you can't do anything, everybody's always watching, and a $500 drone can fucking kill you, and that's that. And it's just, you never get the narrative of victory there, right? You never get this you never get something that the papers want to print. You never get like a decisive blow. Well, you can, right, when Ukraine attacks like economic facilities, oil extraction, but on the front itself, and I think a lot of people feel this in the burnout, right? A lot of people, they in Europe and America, feel a little bit trepidatious advocating for more arms and more money being given to Ukraine, because the perception among a lot of people is like, this is just an actual permanent war. It's like World War I, except now the perpetual stalemate of trench warfare is being supplemented by the perpetual stalemate of like the, you know, the panoptical drone, where every charge across the line is met not only with artillery fire and machine gun fire, but also with, you know, little FPV bomblets smashing you in the face. It's very, I don't know, it's very demoralizing.
I see it in a few ways. In the way that you see it, I see it as demoralizing. I've heard like the buzz of the drones above me. It's very dreary when you're surrounded by all of that, right? I mean, it's whatever. But it's like there's a lot of drones. They're everywhere. We've had failed evacuations because of drones. We've seen I've seen like the worst when it comes to these drones. It's terrible, but I also acknowledge that these are very empowering weapons in their own right. Where before you needed a massive industrial base in order to produce like weapons that people could see as civilization ending, you know, you demolish cities. And instead now with like $878, I believe is the going rate, you can make a drone that could take out armored vehicle carrying 15 soldiers. You could make drones that can intercept helicopters. You can make drones that can take out the economic foundation of the state invading you. And so in some ways, I acknowledge the dreariness of it, but I also acknowledge the way that this can empower smaller nation states with mass drone swarm tactics that can overwhelm larger nation states that usually relied on the fact that they just had more men they could put a gun in the rifle of, like a rifle in their hand. Now it's not that simple. Of course, if you have more drone capacity to produce, it's still scary, but I also acknowledge that if it wasn't for drones, I don't know where Ukraine would be at this point. And so those are the two ways that I have to think about this. On one hand, of course, it changes the face of warfare. These types of evolutions will continue to happen in warfare. They'll always happen in warfare. So we got to learn to live with them. But one other conclusion I found is to hold a kilometer front line on the Ukrainian side, roughly speaking, it takes about 15 men to hold a kilometer. Back in World War II, we're talking hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of men. So that right there, in and of itself, puts Ukraine in a position that they wouldn't have even been able to dream of at the opening salvo of this war.
It's like it's expanding the radius of insurgency, where it used to be, because I'm trying to imagine, like, you apply this in other areas where there's a lot of civil unrest. Like, I don't know, I'm thinking like the cartels in Mexico, right? The cartels in Mexico, they essentially control like large portions of the country, not formally, but I mean, they do, you know. And if there was ever some kind of like big conflict between the cartels in Mexico, at the direct line of conflict historically, you would expect that to take place in specific towns or like along the lines closer to areas of cartel control. But now it's like, what happens if the cartels think like, okay, it's going to come down soon, like it's us or them, they start, you know, investing, they buy, they build, and then you get that kind of drone insurgency. They do what Russia does, where they just start peppering Mexico City. They could blanket the whole country. The range is enough. They're distributed throughout the country enough. They could like hold down a much larger country. Like, it's the democratization thing. You say, could Ukraine have won against Russia without drone warfare? I don't know. Probably not, because it does do a lot to make symmetrical the engagement. I'm reminded of that, and I don't even know how true this is. I only know like the pithy little Reddit, you know, infographic bit. The Pope banned crossbows because now a little peasant boy with no military training could kill a knight in plate armor with you know, from a great distance. It's too scary. It does too much to democratize, to level the playing field, which on some hands it's good, because a lot of the knights were rapists and assholes. But on the other hand, I don't know, I'm sure highwaymen really fucking liked crossbows too, because now they could do whatever they wanted. You could hire like 2 knight guards for your little merchant caravan, and like if they get fucking shot through the forest clearing, then I guess it was a waste of money, you know?
I don't know if this is Doomer HQ, but I'll give you more Doomer supply. I can do this.
I know, because I want to ask, because I know.
Let me throw this scenario
Please,
at you. You remember Operation Spiderweb, right?
No, please remind me.
Operation Spiderweb was when the Ukrainians got a bunch of shipping containers on the back of trucks. They got them deployed outside of major Russian air bases.
The videos of them blowing up the airfields.
And then they blew up the air bases because the drones flew out of the trucks, and it showed that you didn't even need to have the operator necessarily there in order to do this.
Yeah, that was
goated.
Beast mode. Hashtag beast mode.
It destroyed like double digits percentage of like Russia's strategic bomber fleet. It did like a lot of billions and billions worth of dollars.
They hit the fucking Pentagon.
One of the things I thought about is what if somebody wanted to hit the Pentagon? What if somebody wanted to take these things and you're say, of course, Ukraine has a much bigger industrial base than say like a simple terror cell. But if you're 3 to 4 to 5 guys with some 3D printers in any, you know, it could be Middletown, suburbia, who cares? And you are able to put together 30, 40, 50 of these drones, put them in, let's say, instead of 2 massive shipping containers, 2 vans, 3 vans across Washington, D.C., and just figure out some of the dynamics. If you got somebody with a little engineering know-how, what kind of damage could you do?
Like literally as much as you wanted. If you had the right equipment, you could do so much. There's nothing anyone could do to stop it. It's like handguns, where in America, like everyone has a gun if they wanted one, right? I guess it's pretty easy to get your hands on a gun here. So our policy when it comes to firearm handling and how to deal with people with firearms, for the most part, is try to build a world where people don't want to do mass killings. Because if you've arrived at the point where people want to and are ready to and have the ability to, you will never be able to fund the police enough that every shooter could be stopped in time. Like, you just have to accept that the widespread availability of firearms has made the potential for mass violence very easy if people want to engage in it. So you have to keep society stable enough that people don't want to. Maybe that's where this is all leading geopolitically. Maybe the invention of drone warfare is just making war so costly, even between non-peer nations. Look at us in Iran. We're wasting tomahawks. They're throwing shaheeds at us. That eventually people are going to have to learn, like, you just have to do diplomacy. You literally can't do war anymore. Unless you're willing to blanket them with nukes, there's no way to take over territory or meaningfully suppress another country as long as they have the bare minimum amount of money necessary to produce the modern equalizer, the drone. And if that's the case, I don't know how the world adapts to that. And I would hope that, like, eventually Putin would learn this. It'd be nice if he, like, caught up to that point, I guess.
I mean, the world will just have to adapt to it. I hope that the adaptation will be largely positive when it comes to interstate relations, but I worry about it's like a lot of times nation states see how destructive war are now versus back in the day when it's like, what was the casualties? Like, 3 peasants and a chicken, sir. It's like, okay, well, I will continue my wars of conquest. So now, you know, it's like tons and tons of cities, tons of destruction. And so I'd like to hope that this will demotivate states. But if the wars do happen, as some warmongers will want a war anyway, like Vladimir Putin, then I think it's going to mean really destructive wars like this. One thing I wonder about is, you know, I'm a supporter of Taiwan. That's probably not a surprise to anyone. And I just want Taiwan to be able to manage their own affairs. That's generally my position. They want to go back with the Chinese, whatever. If they want to do their own thing, whatever. I base a lot of my politics in the self-rule of people. And so one of my main, I don't want to say one of my main strategies, because that's taking credit for something I didn't do, but one of the main strategies made the most sense to me always, and I think will always proposed by the most intelligent people in the room, was a porcupine strategy. American strategy towards China was always, let's make it so we can take our aircraft carriers, go right off their coast, and just bomb the shit out of them. But a smarter strategy might be, make them come to you. There's an ocean there. That means you got to get ships and put them full of soldiers and actually make the decision to do a naval landing. Naval landings can be contested. Naval landings can especially be contested if there's 10,000 drones swarming at your ship at the same time as you're trying to land people off the shore. And the hope would be that the threat of a humiliating defeat for a nationalist leader that kind of puts their, you know, honor in these types of things, that could lose the legitimacy of the rule if they were to fail, like the junta did in Argentina. Well, maybe you just don't do it. And that's what I would like. That's the outcome I want. I want to deter war as much as possible. So that is my dream for how this could be used to hopefully one day deter war, because I'm a dreamer.
No, I don't think you're wrong. I think we're kind of seeing things trend in that direction. For instance, you have like Operation Market Gardener with Yemen and the Houthis striking ships in the Red Sea, where even in spite of our, like, overwhelming naval might, we can't really stop the Houthis from doing what we want. Saudi Arabia couldn't. How could we, you know? Now that drone technology is advancing so quickly...
I'm sorry, you said Operation Market Garden was when the British landed in, like, Holland.
Did I mix two things? Wait, what was the one under Biden where we struck them after they started attacking ships in the Red Sea following October 7th? Wasn't that something?
I don't know, the big boom operation? I don't know, but I remember
Prosperity Guardian. Okay, I mixed them up.
Yeah,
Prosperity Guardian. Well, even us and the Saudi Arabia, both pretty powerful countries, if we can't stop the Houthis, and the Houthis are not strong, not really, not in the scale that we're talking about here, we're eventually just going to have to deal with everyone. Like, I guess the hope pill, what you're advocating for, and I really hope it works out this way, is that if people get the message, like, you just can't do old-style imperialism anymore. You can't look at a country and have competing interests and say, we're just going to make you do what we want. And on some levels, that's good. On some levels, that's bad. But if it pushes everyone towards more, like, I don't know, agreeable behavior, recognizing that, like, if there is a neighboring country that doesn't want you to be stable, you will not be stable. They can pepper you. It doesn't matter if they're smaller. It doesn't matter if they're weaker. It doesn't matter if they're poorer. As long as they exist, you can't know peace. So you had better get along with them. Maybe, yeah, I don't know. If Russia and Ukraine... And I don't want to imply that they're, like, equal partners in this. This is Russia's fuck up, obviously. But, like, if Russia ever sat down and they were like, ooh, we bit off more than we could chew. Like, they finally admitted it. They're like, okay, we got to stop. Some internal revolt. Putin goes down, whatever. If they ever sat down and admitted, like, this just can't work. We just can't do this. You know, we have to focus on ourselves. Hopefully that would lead to a bit of an international reconciliation, you know? Like, people would look at that and go, okay, I guess we just can't do that anymore, you know? They touch the porcupine. And if Russia can't make it past the quills, you know, how the fuck could anyone else? It's not like Russia was weak at the start of the war. Certainly weaker than they thought they were. But, you know, they had plenty of men and equipment. If they can't do it, how could anyone?
Because there's been times when Russia's failed before, and I don't know if it really shook public consciousness. I mean, when the Japanese beat Russia, I think that said something about where the state of the world was, and like what you know, nation states outside of like the Western Hemisphere.
So they need to do it again.
Compete in like, what was that?
So Japan needs to beat Russia again.
I mean, like, you can't leak what I told you in confidence on the stream right now.
You don't want to fight a two-front war. They wouldn't be happy.
But the Soviets like tried to take Poland and they failed, like on the first go around at least. Like there was like times where overwhelming power still like met like a confrontation, and I don't know if it's gonna lead to that. I honestly think it's gonna take a lot more people putting their hand in the cookie jar and losing it before like there's a general realization that there's not just the atomic threat anymore. There's the like civilizational threat to your cities anytime they're in range of drones. I'd like to think that would go the way of democratization, but I also think if there's a country that doesn't have these doesn't have drones, and some like country like China invades you, what the fuck are you gonna do? They're gonna have all the drones. They're not only bigger than you, but they're gonna have more drone production than any other country on the planet. And so if you're not on the boat, then you're in the water. You're drowning. And
I
so
do
there's also
worry
that
for
fear I
Taiwan.
have.
I worry for Taiwan a lot because it seems like we're giving China the green flag. We were looking at a post from the Kabesi article, the account on Twitter, right before we started talking, which was internally U.S. officials think that if China attempted to take Taiwan right now, like we've lost so many missiles in Iran, we wouldn't even be able to put up a good defense against China, which is like it's crazy how much of a green light we're giving them right now. I really hope they don't take it. I would like to believe that it's like the porcupine again, right? Like China is very strong, but Taiwan is pretty strong too, and they could hold the line, and they have an island fortress, and it would be difficult. I don't know if they'd be able to defend themselves as well as Ukraine, though, you know, considering the circumstances.
Yeah, I mean, they have different circumstances too. Like Ukraine doesn't have like an ocean between them and the Russians. They probably prefer it if they did. But at the end of the day, I do worry about it. And the use of these munitions is just so stupid. What I was told by everybody who said, you know, we have to abandon the Ukrainians now. We simply cannot give them one more bullet, one more cent, and America will collapse. We need to take all of our military resources and pivot it towards Asia, Dylan. The Chinese, Dylan. The Chinese. And I'm like, okay, the fucking Chinese. And then I look over and they take all those bombs and they just throw it at Iran. And it's like, what did you gain out of it? Well, they're angry. The strait's closed. So it's,
our THAAD missile defenses, our Patriots, our fucking Tomahawks, they're just in a goddamn hole right now. Yeah, we've spent like honestly, we probably spent like 300 billion somehow. I know the official numbers don't reflect that. I'm sure, 10 years from now, they're going to look back and go, actually, by that point, somehow we'd spent $1/3 trillion, which, I mean, if that had gone to Ukraine or Taiwan, they could have done so much good with it.
They've spent probably double what we've given to the Ukrainians.
Yeah. It's fucked.
Over the entirety of the war, and they've done it in like 2 months.
It reminds me.
The spending request was for 220 billion.
Yeah.
And then I remember at the start, like racking up at least 20 to 30 billion. It's been a while since I checked, but no, that 300 billion price tag is something that is probably well within reason of where this will end up.
Yeah, listen, especially considering the economic damages we're doing to like the global fuel economy, if 300 billion ends up being the final bill to us, that would be like a dream come true at this point. It reminds me a lot of you talk about like, it's less about troop movement. Everyone, your drones, the satellites, everyone's got eyes on you. It reminds me of, and you'll have to forgive me for like a sophomoric reference here, but in 1984, there's something, and I keep thinking about it because it makes me very sad.
1980, what is that book?
1984, the hit summer bestseller by.
Is that the one that's coming out with Joe Rogan as the pig?
No, that's Animal Farm. Wait, are you doing a bit?
Oh, okay.
That's Animal Farm.
Yeah.
Wait, have you read 1984?
Just making sure. I know 1984.
It's actually a very good book.
Reading, but I know of its existence.
I know it gets me. It's like Fight Club, where the movie's pretty good, but then if you only engage with it through the periphery of the cultural like information through osmosis, it gets to be like a meme. Anyway, there's one of the big pointers is that the world split up into super empires, and they're fighting constantly, but also kind of not really. And one of the goals these mega empires have agreed upon, essentially, de facto, is that actual war with actual soldiers and actual nuclear weapons is really costly and it's bad for business. So what they do instead is they spend an ungodly amount of money and manpower on building these like mega projects, Wunderwaffen, these super mega floating fortresses, right? And they send them out there in the ocean to sink them. They get them into fights where they know they're going to be sunk. $100 billion on a boat and it's down. And it reminds me a bit of this of modern drone warfare, where now that the line on the map is moved more through this suffluence, what's the word I'm looking for? Like you flood something with it, you saturate the saturation of drones. War is more about burning money in both directions, not men. So you can have two economies where they burn off an excess of wealth, through their respective industries. You just burn them at a hole in the ground. Ukraine and Russia could both commit like $1 trillion to just self-destruct in a ditch in here, and it wouldn't even mean anything. It doesn't even necessarily need to cost human lives.
It's interesting because like it is true that it is much more costly to take land, but the main motivations of a lot of the people involved still is going to be land. It's still going to be the territorial boundaries. It's going to be people going back to their homes or people taking other people's homes, and so they're going to work against the system. Like it was more costly to attack than it was to defend during World War I. People still, to push their military objectives, their political objectives, had to attack. For the Russians, the same thing is true at the moment. And I will say one thing that probably should worry Russian commanders is that the more that these deep strike drones proliferate, the gap is that you had short-range drones that could go
there it is.
5
Okay.
kilometers. Then it became 5 to 10, then 15, and that was pretty, vicious. And then in the back, you had the longer range ones that go like 100, 200, 300 kilometers. The problem was the mid-range. The Ukrainians wanted more drones in that mid-range territory where they could strike and hit people before they even get to the front line, break down their logistics, so those soldiers on the front line are like, do I get water today? I don't. Do I get water today? I don't. Fuck it, I'm surrendering. They want to promote that type of breakdown of law and order, which I think is the clearest description of war, is the breakdown of law and order.
What is it going to take,
near
man? The front? It's so... I feel like the Russians have had their dicks stuck in a blender. Not to suggest Ukraine isn't suffering too, but Ukraine is the blender, Like that, it's not equivalent. Russia can withdraw, Ukraine can't. Not really. Like... is there
Nuclear
any
free. Ooh,
shift
that's not bad.
politically? I know Putin doesn't want to do another
You mean negotiations?
conscription wave, like real negotiations, not Russia saying, well, what if we kept the land, like real negotiations. Is there anything? Is anyone backing off a little bit here on Russia?
The last offer I saw from Peskov as of 24 hours ago was that Zelensky
All right, let
can
me
come
switch
to
games.
Moscow and they can negotiate a deal in Moscow based upon previous Russian offers.
What is it going to take, man?
It's gonna take Russian economic buckling, and it's gonna take the war machine itself to stop functioning.
Do they need to strike?
They're going to keep turning the wrench on this, keep turning the handle until eventually it just breaks. It gets too rusty, and at some point it breaks. And that is when I think the Russians will either lose everything or come to the table. For the Ukrainians, I mean, of course, they have the same risk of like a certain break in the economy, especially if they can't defend their factories. Or, there's a question of them not being able to find the budget, which the Russians have the same problem right now. If oil goes back under $100 a barrel, they will not be able to fulfill the budget. It's just not, it will not be physically possible. This war was in many ways a buoy for the Russian economy. These issues are still structural. It's not like the war is going to change all the structural problems, but they certainly appreciate the removal of sanctions and the buoy of the heavy price increases.
Reversing sanctions or maintaining the leave on Russian sanctions even after telling the press that he wouldn't. It's been such a fucking. It was
Besant who said it, but yeah, it was
Besant. Sorry, not Lutnick. Besant. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, Lutnick was the Epstein Islander.
Right, the less pedophilic of the two econ. Yeah. That's
the one who made up that story that when Epstein he pointed me at his massage table when I was next to my wife, and I knew at that moment he was a dastardly individual, and I skedaddled out of that one before immediately going to Epstein Island after whatever.
No, I didn't. No, I mean it's a spiritually Russian move, really. Going to Epstein Island. I don't know. Do you think that Ukraine, like, there's no way out of this without a strike on Moscow? Do you think that like doing a decapitation strike, if ever it was on the table, obviously that'd be very difficult because you'd have to cross 1,000.
I don't think miles. A decapitation. I mean, if Putin just died, I think that would be a crisis for the Russians because they would have power shifting. They have structures for that. But whoever takes that place, the systems are built into Putin. They're not built into any other individual. And even if they're built into the office in some capacity, like he's not going to have the same trust. He's not going to have the same confidence. People aren't going to be scared of him in the way that Putin is. And so in some ways, if Putin died tomorrow and someone took his place, they might think, if I pull out now, they're going to think I'm weak and I'm going to be killed like Prigozhin. And so what I need to do is actually double down on the war. We can't really know how the decapitation strike would end, especially if the Ukrainians kill Putin. Then the reaction would be even further like, well, what's the reaction to a foreign country assassinating your president? Okay, we withdraw. Like, even if America was about to pull out of Vietnam, if right before we pulled out, the Viet Cong assassinated Nixon,
it
that
probably
might actually
would
change the dynamic somewhat.
We'd still be in there today. Yeah, the Viet Cong would still be taking cracks at us from little grass hats.
That's why I focus more on the structures, where it's not really a question of like the decision making unless they see that it's going down and they're grabbing on the nearest escape hatch. That's why I think we need to work to undermine both Russian confidence that they can just wait out the West, that they can just keep pushing forward, that eventual Ukrainian collapse will come, while also undermining their military-industrial complex that carries out the war, while allowing the Ukrainians to, do the rest of destroying the spirit of the Russian army.
Well, I hope the bottom floor for getting Russia to stop economically in terms of the damage they suffer is not as low as completely eliminating their ability to engage in drone warfare, because it seems like that bar is incredibly low.
You don't, but the drone warfare isn't, they will continue to produce drones, but to win the war, Russia cannot just win it on drones. If they're just like fighting only a drone war and they've lost the artillery advantage, they've lost the long range strike advantage, they've lost the transport, like they can't transport their trucks to the front line. They've lost, for example, like the rails that support the occupation. It's not like occupied territory just stays occupied by nature, like you take it and it changes color and that's the end of it. There's people there who collaborate. There's people there who burn like Russian logistics lines, and like there's people who counteract them. The earth itself doesn't want them there. I don't want to be like philosophic about it, but there's a lot of people who aren't happy with the Russian occupation. And so when you combine that with the breakdown of the pay for the soldiers who are there because they're in $50,000 worth of debt, not because they believe that fucking Mariupol should be theirs. They don't care about Mariupol. In that scenario, I don't know how the Russian army will react, but it won't react positively.
I really hope it works out. I hope that eventually the good sense of the average conscript prevails, and they decide that getting sent home in a zinc coffin and having $5 tossed at their mom isn't actually worth their life.
Be clear, the Russian soldiers that are fighting are not conscripts. They are volunteers. Every single one of them has signed a contract. They chose to be there. The Ukrainians are the ones that are fighting a war of survival, so they have the conscripts. The only people who are conscripts on the Russian side, and this is how fucked this war is to its core, are Ukrainians. The only ones they force to fight by the gun are people in occupied territory that they force to go into conscription. So even when they say you're Russian, you're still Ukrainian to them.
Yeah. Well, I hope then that Putin is forced to do another big draft, and every single one of the people he drafts all collectively decide that their lives aren't worth $5 in a zinc coffin, and then it all falls apart. I don't know. It's such a... At least with traditional warfare, I think you get sort of the narrative satisfaction of going, oh, here's the Battle of the Bulge. Look at this line move. Look at this dramatic play, this action. You can have an opinion on it. It's so abstract here, which is why I appreciate you coming on. In addition to, your initiative to get one specific guy in Baltimore thrown in the can. It's been a while since I've caught up on this, and also caught up with you. I appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you. Also, if people are interested at all in supporting Ukraine or making sure that politicians support Ukraine once the next session comes into place, I do have an initiative called Track Ukraine. You can go to trackukraine.com or @TrackUkraine on Instagram, Twitter, or Blue Sky. And every day we're posting graphics that show where politicians stand on the Russian invasion of Ukraine, if they still support Ukraine. And we also have a search tool on our website where you can check the voting record of your legislator. You can enter in your address or their name, and you can see how they voted through their past votes in history. We also have an ambassadorship program where we have Ukrainians speak to legislators and candidates running for office who want to hear from Ukrainians' perspectives. So we're trying to do our best to both raise awareness, have a level of transparency, as well as try to have people hear the voices of those directly affected by the war after 5 years of white noise since February 22.
If I'm not mistaken, you and I will both be speaking soon to a candidate in part over this.
Yes, this weekend.
I
believe.
It's good. In my mind, this should be like a morally unambiguous position, right? Support for Ukraine. So it has not taken the limelight in recent years, but it is still very important because I don't really know what kind of consistent foreign policy position a progressive could have if they wavered on this.
There's only one progressive foreign policy position on this. The United States told Ukraine to disarm or we would starve them. That's a real thing that happened. We would not give them the food aid while they went through the worst inflation crisis of their time, or the Russians could invade. That was the offer that was put on the table by the Clinton administration and Boris Yeltsin. They then gave up their atomic weapons for security assurances, and Obama laughed off in 2012 while debating Mitt Romney the idea that the Russians could invade. The Russians then invade in 2014. Obama tells them not to resist. The Ukrainians do their best. They end up still fighting over the Donbass, and up to 2022, the question of even giving Ukraine bullets, munitions to fill their guns was still like a controversial topic as they were slowly being occupied. And then when the full-scale invasion happens, we give them all these insurances that will stand with them. We get them reliant on American weapon systems. And then we say, never mind, you can have those things being like hunking chunks of metal in the middle of Timbuktu fucking nowhere. We're not going to give you the munitions to maintain them. What does that mean practically on the front line outside of us betraying them, disarming a nation, and abandoning them to the colonial empire, settler empire that is having settlers moved into the homes of those who are displaced. It means the war expanding into Zaporizhia, a city of 600 to 800,000 people. It means the war expanding deeper into Kharkiv. It means the war expanding deeper into Sumy. The Russians are doing like random raids over the border, grabbing civilians in the Sumy Oblast. If they get within the borders of these cities, we're talking about millions upon millions upon millions of more people displaced, making Ukrainians the most displaced population in the entire world is the stakes of us not continuing to support Ukraine, to compel the Russians to come to the negotiating table. That is the goal of the Russian army, and they are trying to pursue it. And even if they haven't pursued it particularly effectively, we shouldn't forget, like, the Russians, you know, they'll bang their head against the wall until they find a solution. That doesn't mean they will, but if we abandon Ukrainians at this point, this will be one of the worst crimes, one of the worst moral failures of the United States of the 21st century, maybe in its entire 250-year history, to make a nation reliant on you for its security and then abandon it to this type of barbarism. To the human safari in Kherson, the human safari in Konstantinivka. It's something that the left should not align itself with.
He's ulting? No, it's gonna be tough to explain the history books too. You know, considering the narrative of defeating fascism in Europe during World War II, and then a fascist country did it again, and everyone was like, eh. You know, it's gonna be a bit confusing. I think it's gonna be tough to explain that to our forebears. So, no, I'm very happy you've launched Track Ukraine. I know that PV is very happy about it as well, because the fact that this issue has taken less of a limelight, I think, can be exploited by some who have had historically bad positions on Ukraine and Russia, which, I mean, shouldn't be normalized in the long run. You know, think there should be some room for discussion, but like not. Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of people out there.
Wait, do you not think that
Russia
those who said that
skeptic.
the war wouldn't happen and then said it'd be over in 2 weeks should not be the people still leading the discussion 5 years on?
I mean, it is insane to me that I guess to put it as lightly as possible, there's no skepticism on the legitimacy of their analysis following that. You know what I mean? Like, maybe this meant something, or maybe it reflected something about prior biases, you know? I don't know. There are a lot of people in the online left. I mean, you know, we all know who we're talking about, who still act as though there's some kind of moral ambiguity to supporting Ukraine. That this is some sort
John
of
Mearsheimer.
active, yeah, who, you know, longtime friend of the channel, Mearsheimer. It's the idea that there's some kind of like extension of U.S. imperial interests in preventing Ukraine from being taken over by a neighboring fascist country. I don't know. I mean, everyone who watches this knows my positions, and yours, I assume, certainly by this point.
Well, I got to tell you, every campaign I've talked to, I've had such fantastic engagement with them. We're talking, I mean, we're hearing a lot of things that we knew were like falsehoods that have kind of spread it around, like Boris Johnson sabotaged the peace deal, or like just things that, like narratives that have just floated around for a while. But in the vast majority of these engagements, people want to know, they want to learn, they're coming at it earnestly, and the discussions have been very productive. I mean, I think Hartzell was the discussion that I knew was going to be a difficult one, but an interesting one, because I knew he was genuine, and I knew that he held a position against Ukraine aid. But after we've had like 2 rounds of talks, I've talked to him for like 4.5 to 5 hours almost in total, like trying to communicate these positions, bringing Ukrainians on. Next, last time I talked to him with somebody who was displaced by both the Israeli and Russian armies, so they could talk to the experience of the fucking
Poor
sad part about it,
fucking
like, you know
guy,
what, we're leaving
man.
Lebanon to get away from war. Let me go to Ukraine.
Was
the family decision.
In 2021, clueless. Finally, a peaceful home in fucking eastern Ukraine. Yeah, that fucking sucks. Yeah,
and then next we're gonna have him talk to labor activists. I mean, these are perspectives that don't get highlighted because they're just not on 3-letter media.
No, 100%. And I think, thankfully, I think that in spite of the buzz, the noise online, where sometimes it's really difficult to get like U.S. skeptical perspectives in mainstream media, so you're very vulnerable to narratives pushed by
all of these already,
countries and institutions that are not just skeptical of U.S. empire, but also just like pro other empire. You know, I think that in the real world, the average progressive American, you know, average left of center, I think they know what's up on this one. I think that support for Ukraine is a widely held, uncontroversial position among people who, by and large, care about other people. So I think that this is a winning issue, and I think we should talk about it more.
Absolutely. I mean, I was having this discuss. I mean, the PV thing did not just happen like that, right? When they came out and they made their, for those who don't know, that PV changed their policy to make it so that support for Ukraine was a red line, and they will not endorse candidates that don't support Ukraine. And I appreciated that, but that was like a week of discussions, and a lot of that was not just centered in the morality of it. It was also centered in the strategy of it. You're a progressive movement. Ukraine is overwhelmingly beloved in the Democratic Party, okay? Whatever your perspective on it is, to the average Democratic voter, Russia got Trump in office, and then Russia continued to be Russia in the way it treats gays and other minority groups and in the way it engages in Russia-like behavior. And then Russia starts the largest war in Europe since World War II, while being giving googly eyes to Donald Trump, who then gets elected again and starts being buddy-buddy with him, letting him get away with everything. To the average Democratic voter, Vladimir Putin is probably the closest you will get to Adolf Hitler on this planet right now today, right? And in the Democratic Party, when you look at average polling, 70% of the public, the vast majority, the American people, they support Ukraine. 30% of Republicans, like 60% of independents, and like 90% of Democrats. If you want to show people that you hold a position that is really about self-determination, it's really decolonial, it's consistent, that you're not just like a limp wrist Burning Man, like playing the bongo, saying peace and love to every issue, you need to engage seriously about an active crisis in Europe, and you should be the loudest voice in the room. We will not legalize like a Russian like settler colonialism and them taking homes. We will not allow children to be kidnapped in this way. I would love to see that because I think it's popular amongst the Democratic base. This is how you get wine moms to listen to you a little bit more. I mean, wine moms love Ukraine. I'm being honest. Half of those
they love
accounts are just wine moms on that wine in the Midwest going crazy. That's what half of NAFO is. Okay, God bless them.
They're painting Midwestern MILFs on the sides of the drones they're sending out to the Donbass over there in Ukraine. You know, they know they got our boys.
So to me, it's electorally viable, it's morally correct, and it's something that could introduce progressive politics and a new way to people. You don't need to talk to them from the perspective, American security interests. You can be like, look, the reason I support Ukraine is because we made promises to them. Russia is doing things that are wrong to their people. You make a moral argument to them that is going to appeal to the vast majority of the Democratic base. And then you know what you do after that? You say, that's also why I care about the sovereignty of the people in Sudan, the sovereignty of the people in Palestine, the sovereignty of the people. There's a connection. There's a through line you can make here. But if you're like, I support Palestine, but fuck the Ukrainians. I support, like, if that's this type of position, not only is it not viable, but it's also immoral, and it doesn't have a through line. It just looks like you're playing team games.
Yeah, you don't have an underlying ideology you can defer to. It doesn't tell you much about your broader priorities, you know? No, I agree 100%. Yeah, it's with Ukraine, it's such an obvious one, too. It's, like, so black and white. Like, normally, I think you would expect there to be a much more... You know, like Russia is so evil. What they did was so evil and so stupid that like you don't even have there's not even a nuanced discussion to be had in it. Really, it's just kind of straightforward. It's boringly straightforward, which is why I'm surprised.
Do you think that's the problem? Is that everybody assumed that like, okay, we all agree on this, and so they were quiet about it for years, thinking the Democratic establishment will basically handle it. And then even though the Democratic establishments failed Ukraine before, Obama failed Ukraine. And just like leaving it for the Democratic establishment to handle it because they signaled on it so much. Number one, that was a failure. But number two, now as the Trumpian right-wing strategy went on this and it was abandonment, I think that the left should have been at the center point of like that, a backlash and reaction to that.
I was talking about this recently with, there was a young man who was interviewing me, but I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that the left is very bad at having a positive position on U.S. foreign policy. The left is very, very good at a negative position. That is to say, don't do X. We do a bad thing, the left says don't do that. For the most part, I tend to agree with that argument. We shouldn't be doing whatever it is we're doing. But the left is bad at making positive cases for what we should do with our power and with our wealth. A good example, and I brought this up the other day, so my apologies to people who are watching who are getting this twice. Like, we all agree it was bad when Elon and Doge cut US aid. Millions are dying and will die because we have cut US aid. But if we all recognize US aid being cut was bad, why did we not beforehand recognize that US aid was good? Why didn't we advocate positively for what was? In its absence, now we recognize that it's We miss it. If it was bad to get rid of it, would it have been good to double it? We need a more cohesive understanding of how the US can use its power and its wealth abroad than just don't intervene. Be anti-interventionist. Okay, sure, and for the most part I agree. But we do have this money. We do have this power. And I don't know, are we isolationists? I mean, do we think we should just never get involved? I mean, what about World War II? What if, I think that's a silly position. Isolationism has always been like a phony, inconsistent, take cracks when you can, don't when you don't want to position. It's why Trump is the way he is, right? They campaign on isolationism, anti-interventionism. Then the moment a new, forever war in the Middle East rears its head, they're like, fuck yeah, let's go for it. So I think we need to be better at making positive cases for the use of our wealth. And god damn it, if keeping Ukraine from getting overwhelmed by Russia isn't a pretty fucking good use of our wealth. I'd say it's such a easy layup for us, man. It's morally good. I know I cut you off there. It's just I don't know. It's good. And from a purely pragmatic perspective, it costs us much less than what broader instability in Europe would cost if Russia was continued to allow, was allowed to march westward further. It's just a win. I don't know, but we don't want to use it. The leftist often just says, well, the U.S. should do less. Okay, we should do less. What do we do with what we have? What do we do at all? What's the moral argument, I'm rambling.
And the thing about USAID is, I'm telling you, I saw them doing work out there. They were doing good work. It was at like refugee collection centers where people are literally like fleeing their homes burning, and USAID is there to like provide them a cot, provide them like, resources.
Like, it's an extension of US soft power. Yes, of course it is, but they're feeding people. And now Elon's cut it up and millions are going to die. Is the world better now? Did that improve things?
I was talking to somebody who works at one of the most advanced prosthetics manufacturers in the world, and it's a Ukrainian company, not too surprising considering what's going on there now, but they really do. It's incredible. Like, you can have presets for like certain hand gestures you want to make. So if you move your muscles in a certain way, you can have it like hold a pen, you can have it like get ready to like open a cap. It's really just interesting looking at all the technology. And I'm looking around and I see stickers, USAID on this CNC machine, USAID on this like thing they use to like, put in this part or put in that part. And I'm like, wow, there's a lot of USAID around here. He's like, oh yeah, and we were supposed to get more that would allow us to make a lot more of these things, but and so they simply, they, with what we gave them, they became one of the best prosthetics manufacturers in the world. And we could have gone further, but we decided to just, I don't know, stop before we could get even further ahead. I don't know. It's really disheartening.
No, I
fucked
agree.
up. I shouldn't have done that.
It doesn't just say USAID. It says USAID from the American people. It was like, that is
I hate
soft
looking
power
good
as it should be
in the eyes
as it should
of
be.
the world. Yeah, I don't know. Isolationism is such a phony ideology. It's so fake. It's always been the bide your time till the advantageous engagement comes up. Nobody actually believes in it. No one lives on an island. Even people who live on an island, we're all interconnected. Isolationism, you're just giving up on foreign policy. I don't know. It's like such a lazy answer. I'm rambling. And I've also held you for longer than I promised I would. Dylan, I really appreciate you taking the time. I look forward to speaking with you again come this weekend when we're interrogating a House candidate. And stay safe out there, okay?
Yeah, I got them locked up in the closet still. I'm gonna take them by truck, and it's gonna be a fantastic stream. People should really tune in. You'll never see anything like it.
Gotcha. And I'll push them to it. Take care, and
Okay.
Stay safe out there.
Appreciate it, Vosh. You have a good one.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye. That was a good chat. Yeah, I agree. I like Dylan a lot. Here, hold on. Close that. Close this. Did I actually leave the call? Yes, I actually left the call. That was nice. Bosch won the debate. Crushed him. Yeah, hold on. Dylan, talk. There we go. Dude, my back is fucking killing me. Oh my god, what the fuck? I have to like do stretches or something. Oh. You know what would feel good as fuck if I was athletic enough to do it? One of the like hanging bar raise, like full leg lifts. You know, like lifting my legs all the way up, like up into the air, not just my knees. Yeah.
Damn shrinker beetle.
Fart shit ass. That's true. Yeah, I respect the hell out of Dylan. Man, imagine getting into like the YouTube politics game, and you're like, this is fun and all. I'm gonna go to a war zone, and then he just stayed there for years. Jesus, you know. I don't think I did a very good job of explaining some of my positions there, mostly because I don't want to ramble for too long. The 1984 thing I was talking about was I worry about a world where you can maintain indefinite war in like a permanent like no-go zone in a you know, just a no man's land where you just send equipment to die, and both countries involved in the war can incur minimal political costs for maintaining it because they're just using their productive capabilities to generate excess military equipment and just sending it over to be exploded. Like you get to siphon off excess wealth without much of a political consequence, you know? Just, yeah, paying contractors forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. Just, you get taxed and the money goes to the contractors who build the drones, vroom, but nothing ever changes or moves. It's just actual permanent warfare. That does worry me, and I think we're kind of, yeah, it's like the status quo, but it's just the MIC's dream, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. The climate apocalypse will come for us eventually, I suppose. It was nice hearing how optimistic Dylan was for a change. Yeah, I mean, it is good, even if it's like weird to think about. It is good that modern drone technology has acted as the crossbow of the modern world. It allows stalemates between non-peer nations. In some ways that's very good, in some ways it's very bad. Maybe it's good that like your village can no longer be terrorized by one knight, like one guy with plate armor and a sword, like, because if no one in that village has anything more than farming equipment or a dagger, one knight with a sword could kill like a lot of people probably. But now you've got crossbows, and you can just kill the knight. And if that knight is like a crazy murderer or rapist or whatever, that's great. But it's probably bad if now like a group of vagabonds with crossbows can just do literally whatever they want unless you're able to mount like a small army to kill them. You know what I mean? Like that's like, it's on one hand, the crazy rapist knights are no longer as much of a problem. On the other hand, highwaymen now have access to the most advanced military technology in the world. So, yeah. Yeah, what happens if the crossbowmen are crazy rapists? I don't know. The proliferation of the AK-47 is what eventually broke European colonial holds over their colonies. Yeah, no, that's 100% true, especially in like North Africa, right? And parts of Southeast Asia. The availability of inexpensive, mass-produced automatic weapons was it was like, damn, well, now like a random kid, a 14-year-old kid has access to basically the best, you know, conventional weaponry you can get, really. Yeah. Man, what would happen though if the Mexican cartels did that? They wouldn't, because there's an economic incentive for them not to. They're too well integrated into the government. But can you imagine if something like that did happen? Like if there was a, like if the Zapatistas were crazy and not based or something, like some little breakaway state tiny and not very powerful, but they can just produce drones like a motherfucker. Or they're getting fronted by another country. I don't know. They can get crushed, they have no manpower? Well, kinda. I mean, with the Zapatistas, yes, of course, but like, what about Yemen? The cartels do have drones. I mean, like modern drone warfare. If the cartels were like, yeah, we can produce 20,000 drones a week and we're just going to bomb everything nearby because we, you understand me. The cartels have tanks. You're misunderstanding my point. It's not about whether you can have a drone. Anyone, you can buy a drone at fucking Best Buy, I mean, modern drone warfare as demonstrated by Ukraine, or to an extent Iran, though as Dylan correctly
Shop room
pointed
with
out, there's a
that.
different
Strike is so damage.
situation there. Yeah, I don't know. Weird.
Mr. Pulse. Move Wraith.
And don't you think something like that can happen in a NATO country? No, I do believe that. It seems like what drone warfare is doing is it's taking the problems with insurgency and making them have a radius outside the country that's being insurgent. Like in Afghanistan, both America and the Soviet Union failed to remove the Taliban because they could hide in the mountains, and it's really fucking difficult. It's really, really, really difficult to like properly get rid of an insurgency. It's like more times than not you fail in trying, right? But now, if an insurgent country wanted to, even if they were not being directly invaded, they could impose the conditions of that insurgency in a range around the area they control, not just the area itself. Now it's not just random, IEDs and attacks and so on within the area they have loose control over. Now they can do it 100 miles out, as long as they have the ability to produce lots and lots of drones, which, I mean, they're only going to get cheaper with time. I don't know. Some of you motherfuckers in chat are trying to argue with me right now, and you don't understand that I'm just talking to myself.
Damn, so close.
I wasn't listening anyway. Yeah, that's fair. Post Dylan talk. Can I be vulnerable with you? Can I be vulnerable with you? I'm like actually mad about my back pain right now, man. I'm like,
ouch.
Hold on. I tried to fix it yesterday. It's like,
I hate TikTok streaming, man, dude. It's all so dumb. Hold on. Mr. Pulse. I need to be able to hit people a little bit more consistently. We're going to Falling Star. Guarding Star. There we go. That ought to do it. Gain 15 gold. Do another alignment. Mystery. Gain that much. Shining Strike is that's actually really helpful since we're leveraging so much of this shit. All right, so let's start with. Okay, what do I want to do here? Start with charge. These 2 strikes are going to become that. Gather light. Falling star. Strike. Not the best, but unmanageable first hand. Damn, this is gonna hurt. Well, I'm gonna have to rest at the thing next turn, which sucks, but whatever. And that's all she wrote. Lovely. Yeah, I need hidden cache. I need better particle generation. Roost. Got 40 going into this boss fight ain't fantastic, but you know what? That's manageable. Okay, we ball. Let's do Astral Pulse, Venerate, Guiding Star, Shining Strike. Yeah, that would have been awesome if I thought my math was wrong on the particles. It would have been awesome though. Shit. Okay. Gather light. Shining Strike. Alignment. Hidden Cache. Neos Fury. Venerate. It's a shame I can't do anything else. Alright, so it'll take 7 damage. That's not the worst I've ever seen. Ooh, there's Void Form. Okay, let's get started then, shall we? We're gonna deal 11 damage to all enemies. I'm gonna use Void Form against my better judgment. Yeah, we're good. I think I can do this. Easy. Damn it, Evan. An attack. Two strikes. Yeah, I'm about to lose this one, man. Damn. Oh well. Shit happens. Alright, we're done. Alright. I am officially done with TikTok streaming, dude. I'm done with it. It's so fucking annoying and stupid. I'm so done with it. Look, no viewers. Dumb. Dumb, dumb, dumb. Never doing TikTok again. We're going to move you down to the bottom. We're going to reconnect with fucking Kick. Allow access, accept all cookies, blah, 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 blah. Yes, Kick is the devil. No, I don't give a shit. Please disable the pop-up blocker him. I haven't logged into Kick yet, so let me do that. Cool. Okay, we're gonna update that all. Cool. Update the thing to be Slay 2. Lovely. And where is in controls, docs, stream information? All right. We continue. All right, let's get on. Bring it on. Oh Lord, my ass hurts. Why is this shit so? Yeah, nah. So I was streaming on TikTok, y'all. I was over there doing that. We're doing Kick instead now because I hate TikTok. I don't know why it as a platform has to be so irritatingly obstinate. And I give up on it. Like I'm gonna post the damn clips to that bitch. I'm gonna do all of that. But God, it's just I'm done with it, dude. Yeah, we're just done. Elsa, are you tweaking, my dear? Play re. Right there. Now I have to like do shit with to make the fucking. Oh, God, I can't fucking win this, dude. But God, that's annoying. I love streaming. It's so irritating. Create merch. Paste. Where's the damn Discord one? I just deleted. So the Discord, is there any other ones that matter initially? It's fine. Bounty, app, Mance, tip. Create CC. CC and tip. Tip. Cool. And we're just going to do that because it's simpler that way. Which way to go? Okay, let's see something interesting, shall we? Alright, unleash, defend, strike.